It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
To the 20s. 20s, these are the traps to avoid. And this is what I think about is interesting, is that when you're in your 20s, okay, don't get mad at me for saying this, because I am an older guy now. I'm getting older.
You just looked at the back of the studio when you said that.
You're young and eager, and sometimes when you're young and eager, you don't know what you don't know, and you want to kind of fake it until you make it.
Of course, yeah.
And retailers can spot that you're green on some decision-making, life decision-making, that they exploit your lack of knowledge.
Absolutely.
So they totally play upon those weaknesses. And then here's the other one that retailers will take advantage of before we jump into the specifics. You're fearful of missing out. Remember, we're herd animals. And who are the scariest herd animals out there? Teenagers and early 20s.
That's right.
I mean, as soon as my daughter turned into a teenager,
something changed.
all
right?
of a sudden, she wants to blend in with the hardwoods as much as possible. Like whenever we pull up to her school, Dad, cut down the radio. Cut down the radio. I don't want anybody to hear that we actually listen to music in this vehicle. I mean, it is one of those things that you have to think about all these things. So to keep those primary voices from telling you to buy stuff that'd be inappropriate, let's talk about these three big categories. The first one, Bo. Pride and fear. How does this play out for somebody in their 20s?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that we're talking about this.
Wait a minute. We talked about this. By the way, we want to give you guys a little scoop.
FTED.
Oh, Daniel, we asked him in the pre-show meeting. We like, Daniel, I know frogs. You sometimes you have to kiss a few frogs to get to a prince. That's the whole thing. That I guarantee you, whenever the artist that created this slide,
that's what they were
counting on that. And we asked Daniel, how in the world does this relate to pride and fear? And he says it's a prideful-looking frog. I kid you not.
When Daniel says it, we're like, okay, I guess we'll go for that.
All right, roll with it. All right,
show.
Daniel, we'll stay with the prideful-looking frog that's on here wearing the crown. Anybody out there in podcast world, I'm sorry you're missing this awesome-looking frog picture that we have. But keep going, Bo.
So one of the things we talked about is how do these tactics creep in? You know, what's sort of the entry point that they come in? And we thought about, with those in the 20s, when it comes to pride and fear, it's really most often a play on the ego.
Yeah.
It's a play on the, hey, you deserve this. There's some entitlement. There's a reward. Or there's this concept of, YOLO, you only live once. And because of that, marketers and financial product pushers recognize they can capitalize on that for 20-year-olds.
The first thing that drives me crazy about young folks, and this sounds so negative, but it's because I'm trying to help you, is that a lot of young people are like, why would I save for the future? I could die tomorrow.
That's right.
Let me go ahead and ruin this misconception for you. Odds are you're going to live to be at least 80 years old. And because that's where the actuarial tables have you, you better start planning that you'll live to be 80. So when you hear you only live once, you only live once to 80. So you better start thinking about, don't use that to let a retailer try to convince you to buy stuff you cannot actually afford, because it's going to blow you up in a lot of ways.
So let's think about some examples of where we see this. Here's a real easy one. Whenever you go to like your clothing store, have you ever noticed, and I don't know when the last time you bought a suit was, but I know when I used to buy suits, they'll say, hey, why don't you try this on? Hey, let's put this on you. And they'll walk you over to the mirror, and then they will just start unloading the compliments on you about how fit you look and how wonderful you look and how it's the perfect and da-da-da-da-da. They're doing that because they know they can play on your ego. Even though you might not be able to afford that suit or that jacket or that whatever you just put on, man, you look so good, you'd be crazy not to buy it.
Well, they're also, I mean, and I don't mean to go ahead and bring in another concept, but it is true. When a sales clerk is working for you and they say, hey, how does that fit? Can I bring you a different size? Mm-hmm. They're also creating an unseen social contract, because if you feel like this person's working really hard for you, you're more inclined to also purchase. So it definitely comes into play. You feel like a sense of what success looks like. Advertisers are playing upon that ego or that insecurity that you might have. Here's another one, Bo. Where you go to college.
Oh, yeah.
I know in high school, you hyper-focus on, I've got to go to the best schools. And parents, by the way, are guilty of this too. It's not just you guys in your 20s. It's also the parents that are thinking about this. Little known fact, of the 10 biggest public companies in the United States, 8 of the CEOs went to public universities.
I'm going to say it again. Of the 10 largest companies in America, 8 of the 10 CEOs went to a public school. Didn't go to some private school, didn't go to some super unique, prestigious school. Just a public university.
So think about that. I mean, the stats, I mean, that's a pretty stark reality if you look at top 10, but it's about 50-50 in general on success. So I would say that shows that the data points say just because you spend a lot more on what you perceive to be better doesn't necessarily, but there has been a kind of a manipulation in making that feel like it's your pride that you went to the best school.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. Now, I have a lot of pride for the University of Georgia because that's where, we obviously went to school. But to my knowledge, I don't think that a client has ever hired us to be their advisor because of the school that we went to. And so if you imagine, if you have something like that that's not really paying dividends years into your career, it might not make sense to go rack up tons of student loans that you're going to be paying for years into your career simply for that reason, to stroke the pride and ego.
Well, that leads to next, mistruths and manipulations.
Yep.
And here's, like I said, they always enter. The reason we have a slide of a thing of raw corn is because there's always a kernel of truth. It's just like all good comedy is funny because there's just a touch of something truth to it. Well, it's the same way with manipulation on you. Because here's the thing. Here's the examples. You can afford anything 1 month at a time.
I've got so many friends and families who fall prey to that. I'll say, oh my gosh, wow, you bought that. How do you afford that? Oh, how do I afford it? It's only $100 a month. I just financed it for the next 18 and a half years. No big deal.
Like I said, they are out there to make you feel like anything is possible if you're just willing to finance it.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you can necessarily afford it. Social media influencers. I mean, here's the thing. We just had the Oscars not too long ago, and there was an article where I think every celebrity or presenter got a bag of like $255,000 worth of swag or something like that. And it had like plastic surgery, had a yacht, a trip. Why are they doing this stuff? Is because these guys get it free because then they're going to pitch it or sell it because they know that a lot of people are going to see people who are these influencers on social media and so forth. And they're going to say, well, if it's good enough for them, I ought to do that. It not only is a mistruth or manipulation, but it's also playing upon your pride. So these things are definitely being layered and using that against you.
This is a brief aside, but I think about it all the time. You hear people talk about on social media, that's really the highlight reel of most people's lives. And it's kind of true. It is the highlight reel. What I think is so funny is there's been this new thing that sprung up, and specifically this is on Instagram. There's an Instagram handle where I'm not going to give them a pitch, but they actually catch videos of people out in the wild taking pictures, like some, body, like taking a ridiculous picture in the middle of a street in New York with cars flying by, trying to get that perfect image. Well, when you step away and see the reality of what that looks like, it's ridiculous. So
well, we went to D.C. not too long ago. All the people posing with the landmarks in kooky, crazy ways so they could put it on the gram was kind of funny.
Exactly.
I do want to do one other manipulation before we move on from this. Have you noticed how easy all the shopping websites, including Instagram, now have a shop feature where people are influencers and others, and now it's just basically a one-click purchase.
That's exactly
That's
right.
another manipulation. Even Tesla. I love Tesla. You guys know I can't say anything bad, but even they have gotten in trouble because they created within their app an upgrade on all the software just with a click of a button. Why do you think Amazon has a buy now button, or they let you go put on your detergent, just a click button, kind of looks like this, where you click it and all of a sudden the stuff's just going to show up at your house? It's because anything that can grease the skids or manipulate you to do the retail transaction even easier. And then that also, I want to close it out. Last thing, because we kind of hit on this previously with pride. Student loan debt. I mean, it is a manipulation in some ways, especially on majors that are not going to pay dividends.
That's what I think is so. Not every major, not every career path is a surefire path to success. But man, when you sit down with the admissions officer or whoever's the advocate for the school, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you why you have to go to this school and pursue this major and have this degree so that you can have this path. As two folks who work with very successful people all over the country from all walks of life, there is no singular path to success. So don't fall prey to thinking you have to follow some certain line to get there.
No, I think the biggest thing, this is the best advice I can give you. Find out what you're world class at, be in the top 5% of it, and you'll make money at it.
Exactly
there are
right.
people that are making money as long as you're just world class, you can exploit that talent.
Love it.
So let's move on to invisible social contract. This is... You feel like this is the entry point, is there's a desire to reciprocate and do good.
Yeah, that was that whole, that sort of unspoken moral obligation to influence society by the way you make your purchase decisions. I don't know. Maybe it's not just young people, but
Well,
I feel like it's-
virtue signaling is legit. I mean,
right.
I will tell you, I have at least 3 pairs in my closet of Tom's shoes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we went through a whole phase, and then there's this commercial on TV right now that every time it comes on while we're watching cable news, my wife goes, she kind of rolls her eyes because it's 2 surfer guys that are shirtless. They're supposedly cleaning up all the waters in the ocean and cleaning up trash. If you buy this bracelet that they're selling made out of their recycled plastics, but it's just the way they're presenting how they care for, and they do care for the world, I'm sure, but why is it shirtless? Why are they, what it looks like to me, and now, don't get mad at me because guys, I want to change. I donate a lot of money to making the world a better place too. But there's a part of me, the cynical side is like, are these 2 surfers that just figured out a way to kind of virtue signal their way into surfing the world as well as creating, good for them for figuring out, but I just want you to know this is what's the manipulation or the invisible contract that's being played upon you.
And there's even another one that we see all the time, and it's this unspoken assessment that when you're in your 20s, when you're young, when you're carefree and no obligations, you got to go do that big thing. You got to go backpack Europe and spend a month over, somewhere else in some other part of the world. And a lot of folks feel like, oh, well, I have to do that because that's where I'm in life. And they're not forced, but they are coerced into making very poor financial decisions because that's what society expects of them in that stage of life.
Because they think it's scarcity. It's
That's right.
that you're only in your 20s once, so YOLO, you only live once, so you better make it work. The problem is look, and I want you to have that bedazzled lifestyle in your 20s, but what I mean by that is it better be basic, but you're putting a lot of sparkles on your basic jeans, meaning that you are going out there, going and creating memories, but you don't have to go spend a ton of money to do it.
right.
Please enjoy your 20s because you only get them once, but do it reasonable. If you're financing your vacations on credit card debt, probably doing it wrong, and you're probably being manipulated with this invisible social contract of what things look like. It's the same thing, but with weddings. Weddings
that's
are
a
a
big
big
one.
one. It's not only for the 20-year-olds, it's also for the parents, is because, and I couldn't believe this, Daniel shared with me in his research that the average wedding is now close to $34,000. I don't know that I believe that.
And if it's true, I remember my wedding, and it was quick. It was like over in like a matter of a couple hours.
If you even remember your wedding, like I didn't even get to eat at my wedding. We spent all this money on food. I didn't get to eat it because you're walking around shaking hands, thanking everybody for coming. It was a mess. It was great. Don't get me wrong. Love that I've been married I'm in my 22nd year of marriage, but the wedding was a blur and very expensive. It was one of those things because my wife's family did save some money.
Sure.
As a money person, I already had my eyes on if we eloped. Nope, we spent every penny of a good bit of that money. So it's I can't, but it was nowhere near $34,000.
But a lot of that is because this imaginary social contract exists. It says that, oh, well, I have to have the wedding, and I have to have the gown, and we have to have the food, and we have to have the things. Maybe you don't really have to have those things.
No. And that ties into the have to. I think for 20-year-olds, and I hate to keep picking on you guys, but I talked about this in another show where one of the things that drives, and I think it's that invisible social contract. A lot of you guys, you've been in school since kindergarten, you graduate college, you're like, man, I have done it. I have accomplished something. That is that invisible social contract. This is my time to finally reward myself for all the hard work. And essentially, you're dumping the Gatorade bottle on yourself, the big canister of Gatorade, but you've only made it through the first quarter. You have not won the game. So buying the fancy whip, going out there and buying the designer stuff, you haven't earned it yet. Yes, you've done an accomplishment. Take some wins off that, but do not get yourself in a pickle of a situation just because you're doing a touchdown dance at the end of the first quarter.
I love it.